Alright, is this thing on? Can you hear me, Mike? Hey, all you cool cats and kittens. Welcome to the Shoe Dog and Mike podcast, Quarantine Edition Part 2.
That was great.
That's all I got, I'm nothing if not willing to ride a trend and a catchphrase. I mean, I love fucking catchphrases.
That's for sure.
You know that.
I just wish we could have cashed in somehow.
Yeah. Why? That's what we need. We haven't come up with a catchphrase. Maybe for the next episode, we should come up with some catchphrases. Does that sound like a plan?
I think they just come. Catchphrases are hard to just write.
Well, right, but you have to know when you got something to then go with it. If you don't go with it, then it's into the abyss.
I don't envy people that write copy for ad agencies. I actually used to shit all over that profession, and now I have renewed respect for it because I've had one-off little copywriting assignments before where I'm like, fuck, you could easily spend hours on this. And part of that, I think, is when they have to come up with some kind of catchphrase.
Yeah, the insurance companies are good for that. They all got to have their own little catchy slogans and their humorous ads, because somewhere along the line it became a law that all insurance ads have to have some kind of comedic value to them. It's all that damn gecko's fault. So anyway, how's the quarantine treating you, Mike, as we're rolling in well into the fucking second month pretty much of lockdown?
It's easy for me. But like I said, I could just as well be having an anxiety attack in my car somewhere on the way home from going to pick up groceries. If we
Yeah, right.
And again, these are all conveniences unique to our time. So if this would have happened in 2002, which I randomly throw back to that year because it's still pretty modern, but it's pre push button. I call our culture now push button. There's nothing you can't do by pushing a button.
Instant gratification.
Yeah, it's very push button. But just think of this. I don't believe that there were massive grocery deliveries available online in 2002 or 1995 or, and I don't think, you could do Amazon 2-day shipping and this and that. I mean, we're lucky. I'm not allowed to go out to the store. The wife does let me occasionally run out if I'm not going to be going to some place where there's a bunch of people just to kind of clear the cabin fever out a little bit. But I don't really have cabin fever here. I like being home. I'm an introvert. I'm socially distant by nature.
Exactly. Some of us have been preparing for this.
Well, to an extent, and then, if you look on the news and see who are the people, what kind of people are really becoming known for refusing this whole platform of social distancing and stuff, and it's exactly the kind of people doing the kind of things that you'd have been embarrassed about for some other reason if it was you. So, am I not one of the cool kids because this time 10 years ago I wasn't on some highfalutin spring break trip somewhere where me and my buddies just got wasted for a week? Yeah, whatever. I guess I would have liked going on a cool spring break trip. I never did. I mean, I went to Puerto Rico with my dad, but that wasn't like hedonism.
That wasn't going down for Sodom and Gomorrah in Daytona. No doubt about that.
And then look at you have some politicians that are like, oh, everybody just do your thing, and then you have some that are, they actually care about people. But it's funny because as an introvert, it's like, oh, are you going to the party this weekend? Like, fuck no, I'll find any reason not to go to that party. And now with everything that comes up like that, it's like, nope, can't, nope, can't, nope, can't. But that's just making things socially easier for people. For me, for an introvert, for introverted people. It doesn't make life easier. This whole thing still sucks.
Of course. I mean, but it's for many of us, it's simply an inconvenience. I mean, we touched on in the last show about, of course, many people are facing business owners. I mean, you got to feel real shitty for, how many small businesses may not come back after this. But for the vast majority of us, it's just an inconvenience, and hopefully we will, like we talked about last time, come out a lot stronger on the other side and a lot fucking smarter. I mean, we got to learn our lessons. And I hope as a people some lessons have been learned over the last couple of months. But I'm not hopeful of it. Sadly, I'm not hopeful of it. All right, so shall we move? I mean, you can't say move on to non-corona related things because it seems, I mean, everything in the world some way ties in. But something I would like to talk about before we go there real quick. Just want to say thanks everybody for listening. You can subscribe to us on YouTube. That's always very, very helpful. You can download the podcast in the traditional style on SoundCloud, Spotify, Stitcher. Mike, are you awake over there? I'm sorry. I've been blabbering.
Yeah, I was tweeting. I'm sorry.
Go good, but well, perfect. Because I was going to throw to you to remind all of our listener what the Twitter handle is to get a hold of us.
It's at ShoeDogM for Mike, and I promise, if you have been getting stuff in your timeline where it's very clearly me posting with our Twitter account to complain about shit, I'm not going to do it anymore. I swear. I'm a reformed man.
Well, yeah. I was never too worried about you posting anything that would so grossly counteract my opinions on life that I'd hate you for it. So, yeah, I pretty much left you mostly control the Twitter.
Oh, thanks.
I'm probably missing some good shit over there, but that's on me.
Well, I appreciate that. And by the way, for what it's worth, I did the whole MJF thing on my personal account. So.
Oh, the whole MJF thing, yes.
Maybe bonus points.
You and Mr. Maxwell Jacob Friedman from AEW had a hell of a little Twitter battle there a week or two back.
Yeah, but you know what? We flattened the curve. We socially distanced from each other, and before it got out of control and started spreading all over the Twitter, we had it basically already squashed and fizzed out. Didn't last very long. It was intense for the amount of time that it did last.
Sure.
But it wasn't one of these things where I had to think about getting rid of my account or whatever. I deleted the original tweet that started the whole thing, but the reason it was still getting so many fucking replies and retweets was because he posted my 2 other tweets as a screenshot. And so it wasn't like I could delete what he was displaying because it was an image, not a post. You know what I mean?
It lives forever in infamy.
Yeah, it's still out there. It's still one of MJF's tweets.
Nice.
But yeah, it wasn't really a big deal. We had, first of all, you can't live the gimmick and then just pull the ripcord whenever somebody gets your goat, which is what he did. He was, all of a sudden, he's out of character, and he's the victim, and I'm this big anti-Semite. You know, I've got people replying to the thread.
Well, it's all in the perception of the statement. I mean, if the statement were meant anti-Semitically, which I know it wasn't, then perhaps the reaction is warranted. But obviously it was one of those moments of somebody connecting dots that weren't meant to be fucking connected, I'm sure.
Well, I mean, look at it this way. It was in response to his ownership, call it, what do you call it, living the gimmick, or what's the other term they use? You're committed, you know. From that whole thing with him flipping off the little kid. Because the whole angle of that, with him trying to get as much heat as possible for it, was I know that what I did crossed the line in playing my character, but I'm going to still own it because that's just going to add that much more depth to my character. That's going to give me that much better heat. So what I did was very much the same thing, except he knew that he could exploit a weak spot for some people. It's not as though that tweet came from, Stormfront's website or some known, harassing terrorist, racial extremist organization or somebody who affiliates with them. It's just me. And if you go back through my tweets and my writings online, none of it's like some large. I'm not going to be the next. What was it, Lars Sullivan? For a lot of people, it would just be common sense. It would be like, oh, that's just a really bad joke because of the context, right? And I think it's important to understand that there was context. It's not like one day I was just sitting around, didn't have nothing to do, no work, free time. The baby doesn't need me. I don't have any chores to do. I'm not doing the lawn, whatever. I think I'll just go on Twitter and just post Holocaust jokes on MJF's timeline because he's Jewish. It was very much more like him being a total jerk off to try and get cheap heat for traumatizing a 7-year-old, basically. And then me saying, oh yeah, well watch this. That's what that was. It wasn't this, there were a lot of people trying to say, oh, this guy probably goes around and targets people. Well, no. Sorry. Sorry to be very one-dimensional and lame and disappointing. I'm not Joe Exotic. I'm not some person who, once you scratch beneath the surface, now there's endless layers of shit to dig through. It was just one bad joke. And he didn't block me.
You said a very valid phrase back there, and that was about context. Because if I'm going to play devil's advocate, my fucking God, on both sides of the spectrum of the media these days, and again, both sides, shit being taken out of context happens way too fucking much.
Yeah.
I mean, for as bad of a fucking blithering blatherskipe as Donald Trump can be, there are even times where, his shit is made even worse because it's taken out of context. Not that the context is much better, but, it's true.
I'm with you.
And the trigger-happy social media snowflake culture has just made that worse. I mean, you're talking about making a joke. Humor should know no bounds. If you understand that somebody is making a joke and it might be considered off-putting, they're making a joke. Maybe you wouldn't make that joke. Maybe you personally find that type of material off-color. But that doesn't mean that you should run around thinking this guy deserves to be fucking drug out in the town square and hung because he made some fucking controversial attempts at humor. But it's how people react to things now. Everybody just has to fucking lose their shit immediately.
Well, to a degree, I agree with you. However, I will say, very disappointing to me in the whole thing was that I did have 2 or 3 people straight up tell me that I had committed a hate crime. And I had one person tell me that they had reported my tweet to Twitter and to the FBI. And it wasn't just that they were trolling me and they were like, oh, just turned you in, bro. It was that what they said was with conviction. Like, they really felt like they were slaying a monster by telling me they were, and it's like, whoa. You talk about PC culture, we need a refresher course on what a fucking hate crime is. Because the ones that actually happen are despicable, and they're often extremely physically violent, and they can involve everything from painting something offensive on someone's house to blowing up the church they're in. So, those people those 3 or 4 of you out there on the Twitterverse that called it a hate crime can fuck off. And that's not me trying to get heat either. Because my Twitter page doesn't have a persona. It's just shit that I post. It's not, do I have to say this and avoid that? It's just like, whatever. It's just, I blame this all on Facebook.
It's a sounding board.
I blame it all on Facebook and whatever other systems dismantling MySpace. Because MySpace was a place where you could be yourself. You wanted to post a bunch of weird fucking pictures all in a row and take up your whole page and people would have to scroll for an hour to get through your weird-ass pictures. That was up to you.
That shit sucked for those of us, which admittedly was most people back then, still on fucking dial-up, though. It would take like 9 minutes for somebody's pimped-out MySpace page to load.
Oh, it's very easy. If you had a pimped-out MySpace page and it had videos embedded on it and shit, and I couldn't just open it right away, I wasn't gonna... You're not one of my MySpace friends then.
It's ironic because that's when Facebook first came out, I loved it for the very reason that it was more streamlined, it was more direct. I didn't know it would turn into some place full of hooker bots and Russian bots and any other kind of creepy bot you can imagine. But it is now. We're not going to go into the details, but remember that really creepy, weird story of somebody getting connected to me on Facebook through the algorithms from earlier today off air. I mean, yeah. I'm like really freaky about the algorithms right now. So hey, anyway, do you have anything more to add on this particular role?
No, although if you listen to and believe what Edward Snowden was trying to tell people, it's almost like beyond an algorithm at this point. He implied that there were some capabilities within these governments and private companies and stuff where they can see if the tag on your t-shirt is sticking out while you're laying on your back in bed. I almost say chalking it up to the algorithm would be like a very diffusing minimalist way to look at it.
If anybody's watching me through my phone when I'm in bed, I have mercy on their eyes. Just saying.
I would just think, you know.
They'll see things they can't unsee.
But, you know, that all goes back to push button for me. Everything, you know, people just they don't want to dive into something. They're like, I don't have time for this. Even in these days of quarantine where you got all the time, people are still very impulse driven.
Too much time on my hands.
And that's why they can't give up even on the wrestling, which, you know, was apparently named an essential business function, at least by the governor of Florida.
Too much time on my hands. Yeah, it's funny. Thank you for doing my segue for me. Yeah, empty arena wrestling. How awful is that? Yeah, the essential. Yeah, there's some weird. There's definitely some weird political connections with the McMahon family being proven true there. That's all fucked up.
I agree. I don't think any form of entertainment. I appreciate the perspective of someone who is an entertainer feeling like they need to reciprocate to their fans and their audience members who maybe for some people this is what keeps them going in life. And now they need it more than ever. And I can appreciate that mentality, but we have to think about more than just the fans of the show. Because when the people who play the wrestlers on the show leave and go home, they're just other regular people. So it's like if you make that exception for pro wrestling, now you have to do it for football, baseball, basketball, hockey, Broadway musicals, TV shows, soap operas, movies. Now everybody's got a duty to entertain. And it's like, no, essential means if you're not a fucking food store employee or a fucking farmer or a doctor or someone who owns a gas station, you should just shut the fuck up and stay in.
Yeah, I mean, but by the time anybody hears this, who knows how that whole thing will play out. But I mean, as of this moment, they're barreling right ahead with, you know, limited, doing live shows with limited crews and everything with no fans there in the fucking performance center, and it's just weird, man. I mean, beyond the fact that everybody that's there is being put at risk. Jerry Lawler is a 70-year-old man who's had a fucking heart attack, and they've got him down there. What the fuck is that about?
They just wanted him to get some ratings because now I think everybody's going to tune in every week that he's on commentary to see what kind of dumb racist shit he's going to come out with.
I was going to say I knew where you were going. Yeah, apparently he.
And that's just what it is.
Well, there you go. Tying right back into what we said before, dude. Can you imagine the jokes that Lawler and Bobby Heenan used to get away with making? They would have everybody's panties in a wad these days. You can't say shit trying to be funny.
But there's no.
And the king's a victim.
But the output. Like what some people attribute to wrestling in their minds is a lot greater and more dynamic and layered and filled with truth than what's actually being broadcast on the TV. That is to say, if you're a big Beatles fan, then probably everything else in the realm of music, over all human history, is in second place to the Beatles for you. And that's the way that you see the world. And so people that are really big wrestling fans, yeah, they're going to get, some of these people who say, oh, I do it for the energy I get from the fans. Well, that might very well be true for some of those people. But this, let's be clear, this is not a sport. And there's no...
Really?
Well, I just mean, a lot of the arguments that people have made for sports and stuff is, oh, well,
right.
It's so unfair to the college athlete who's not going to get to play in a Senior Bowl, or it's so, whatever, these poor people who, this is a moment in their life that has to happen right now, and we're going to take it away from them, that kind of thing. This is wrestling. It's scripted. They're not going to have to
pick right up where they fucking left off in 2 months.
It's not like every March they have to have the WWE Championship, and if the season hasn't been on pace up until that point, it's ruined. It's just a fucking TV show. And I say that with, I'm not sparing AEW by any means. Is it nice that I find one more entertaining than the other? Yeah, I guess so. It shows I'm not a total hard ass. But the logical person in me just wants to tell both of them, just cut it the fuck out.
We're giving Vince all the shit, but in truth, AEW is skirting through the same loopholes, although I don't think they've been deemed a necessary service. I think they're just recording under the cover of dark in some warehouse every week at like 2 a.m. when nobody notices. I think that's their methodology right now.
Yeah, and even that's kind of stupid.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like, imagine if you went online... Because, we're wrestling fans, so it becomes a little bit of mental gymnastics for us to try and imagine things outside the perspective of wrestling fans, but just for comparison's sake. What if we clicked on an article on Google tomorrow that was about a group of LARPers whose specialty was the Renaissance period. And they were going to have, like, this huge medieval battle where the two warring armies come together and they LARP battle, and then they have a big pizza and soda party afterwards at their mom's house. Would your reaction be anything even a little short of, look at these fucking losers? No, it wouldn't. That would be exactly what you would think. At least that's what I would think right away. I'd be like, what a bunch of dipshits. And that's got to be how a lot of people are looking at pro wrestling. Whether it's in front of a packed crowd or whether it is just three guys wrestling in a dark warehouse, it's like, look at you fucking jerks. Like, how important do you really think you are?
I'm as important as anybody, goddammit. We know how important McMahon thinks he is. That's why he can't stop. No coronavirus is going to stop Mr. McMahon. He's already smarting over the XFL's second nosedive. He's got to keep something rolling for himself. This sucks. This means now he's going to be fucking hands-on in WWE more often again. He doesn't have a plaything. Fuck. WWE's totally screwed now. The old man's back.
I think you're giving him too much credit. I don't even know what's going to be around in 2 years. And again, that's a little bit of my silver linings. Thinking that, we should do a value check on just about everything we hold dear and see what it really took for us to get through these times. And if you're not on that list, then, you might still be around, but it won't be quick. Like the Super Bowl, for example.
Yeah.
Again, I can only speak for myself, but I got to imagine that even if everybody's vaccinated and you don't hear about ventilator shortages for a while, I'm pretty sure that when the next Super Bowl rolls around, there's still going to be a good chunk of people out there who are extremely hesitant to go to some packed Super Bowl party at someone's house.
Exactly. Well, even beyond that, if the Super Bowl were to have a crowd, I mean, even if they, quote, open everything up, does the average person feel comfortable going to a packed concert with 3,000 people or a sporting event? Just because they say we can doesn't mean that we feel like we should or want to. And nobody knows how that'll turn out once they, quote, open it all up. It's not going to return to the way it was in December. It's not just a switch that everybody goes back to normal. No, there's going to be a new normal, but it won't be what we knew. And I think it's going to be a long time before anybody is gathering in the tens of thousands again. Sad to say. I mean, the NFL, even by the time, I don't know. There'll be some kind of an NFL season, but I don't know if there's going to be crowds by then.
That's the whole thing. You have an entire economy, sub-economy, you'll call it, for live entertainment. Sports, music, racing, bodybuilding competitions.
Broadway,
where does that all go?
Earlier, anything that sells a ticket, and that's a big fucking part of the economy, no doubt about it. It's gone, or at least it's on ice for a good long time, and that's definitely going to be the biggest lingering change. I mean, who knows? I don't know if any kids are going to go back to school this year, even in the states led by morons, if they're going to have classes start back up in May. Although possibly.
Well, Pennsylvania has said definitively that the rest of the academic year is gone.
No, you are right. Our area has already made the official statement, but I mean, you've got a lot of states where they're still going to church on Sundays. They're still in hoax mode
for now. But as I said, it's going to be the Great Equalizer, because really the best way to think of it is, if we overcompensate for the risk and we stop the wrestling and we stop the football games and nobody can go walk around a big crowded mall, just wandering in and out of stores to window shop or whatever, going to these big picnics and stuff, that's even the end of it. It's a virus. It's an evolving organism. There could be if they don't, depending on what happens in the labs, next year could be worse. So little by little, these places that are acting like, it's kind of like you're at home, you're by yourself, you're munching down on some KFC chocolate cake or whatever it is, and then all of a sudden you think you hear like one of your doorknobs turn, like somebody's trying to get in the house or whatever. You completely freeze solid until you're pretty sure you figured out, the house always makes that noise or whatever, and then you go back to what you were doing. And I think a lot of people think that this is one of those. They're like, as long as I can hold my breath long enough for this to be over, then once I let my breath out, it's totally fine. I'll look smart for not being a pussy and panicking. No, you won't. More people will die. And as the deaths mount, it's going to be harder and harder for people to say, out here because we do have states and cities where they don't consider themselves to be at that much risk. If you go out to Montana and Wyoming and Idaho and stuff like that. But that doesn't make it any less contagious.
No, I mean, we're at the outlying end of the fucking epicenter, and you're exactly right. And that's why, I mean, yes, you can say it's a blue state, red state thing. It just coincidentally, the red states coincide with the more sparsely populated, wide open Midwestern region, where naturally they are less affected by this than the population centers. So, I mean, everybody who wants to say it falls along political lines, it's like, no, it more falls along the lines of where people are more susceptible to it being able to blow up like it did. No, it's not going to happen in goddamn East Lubbock, Texas. But if you live in Hoboken, I'd be worried. And it could blow up in East Lubbock, Texas someday soon.
But that's the whole thing, too, is if you think of a place such as, I don't know, like one of these little trailer park RV communities out in the middle of the Nevada desert, let's say this, the residences and everybody's so loosely linked together that they don't even call it a borough or whatever. They just tell you what county they're in. And everything's handled at the county level. Even if you've got 10,000 people spread out over 10 million square miles, and that looks like nothing compared to New York City, that doesn't mean that all 10,000 people in your radius couldn't still get it.
Right. Once it's in the area, and if you're doing nothing to mitigate it, well, then you're a petri dish.
Well, it's a logical fallacy. People think, well, if there's less sick people around me, it's less dangerous. No, it just takes one person.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter if you're in a, because this is, again, I think rural America has this thing going on right now where they may not mean it every single time, but they sure do talk a lot like they look at the urban areas in this country as a different subdivision, like
Right.
almost not to the point of, the north and the south, but pretty close, where they think there's two separate sets of rules and things that work here don't work there and all that stuff.
Well, it's not far from the truth. You're exactly right. I mean, they're polar opposite cultures, and it's so ingrained in those areas that, they still live in the fucking sit on your back porch sipping lemonade and go to church every Sunday world. Put on your Sunday best, and, they're still living in 1958. And you know what? I'm not one to decry the simple life. The simple life is good, but it doesn't protect you from the world around you entirely. And this is one of those instances where it doesn't.
Like I said, these are strange and interesting times.
So yeah, exactly, man. We're living through the era of which the history books will not be kind to America.
Speaking of which, one of the things I wanted to point out, and I don't think it'll be trending forever, but one of the hashtags that I saw kind of bobbing at the surface for a while there that's, continues to get a pile of hypotheticals and memes. Those posts you see on social media, and it's just an open invitation for people to just throw memes on a pile. So there's one now that's called How 2020 Could Get Worse. So it's just a bunch of people, answering that question. And many are, of course, they do it with their little memes and this and that. But it got me thinking, that's another thing that we have to kind of get past, is everybody has this artificial boundary where 1 year ends and the other one begins. Like, oh, we just got to make it through 2020. Well, no. We have to make it through 2021 as well as 2022. And, it's just, I don't know. I think this fast-paced, push-button, wanting everything at the drop of a dime, free 2-day shipping, overnight delivery, fucking I emailed it to you yesterday, lifestyle is going to be gone. I think it's going to eventually dissolve, and people are just going to have to come up with a whole new system.
Well, that's another plus of this whole thing, is it's just, for many people, it's just letting everybody have a chance to breathe. Slow down that rat race pace for a little while. Unfortunately, I was going to say, get to meet your neighbors. You're not allowed to do that right now. But, so many people they spend so much time living on the hamster wheel of life that they don't even know what to do once it stops spinning. And that's where they sit right now. But it's good for them. Smell the roses. That you can still do. As long as you're not 6 feet next to your friend or loved one. And that's why podcasting is great, because there is no social interaction required. Just our sexy voices being beamed into your mobile device. But hopefully everyone is doing good with that social distancing out there, I mean, it's not easy. A lot of people with tight families not getting to see each other, through Easter and everything, but we will get through it. Do you think we're going to get through it? Will we be better at the end? We talk about these hypotheticals. Do you think this will make at least some positive impact on the human race and how we treat one another and how we look at the world around us?
But I still think the net gain is going to have a lot to do with luck and coincidence. It's not going to be because people all en masse became willfully more enlightened. I think it's just going to be like, well, some things become completely impractical. Yeah. And so people are forced to do things a better way because they simply cannot. But it's not always going to be by choice, no. I have low expectations, as always, for humanity, that given the opportunity, they will fuck it up somehow. So, speaking of which, you talk about everybody being in a hurry to get back to normal. Not to be what you call a Debbie Downer, but let me pose this scenario to you. So, you live in a state where the governor has decided that, well, the hospitals, everything seems to be slowing down, the social distancing working. They're going to gradually start to reopen. And then before, a year or two goes by, not even a year, even if it's just 6 months, you start to, okay, this is starting to feel like we're putting on dry, clean socks. Like this should be smooth, it should be easy. And then people who had COVID-19 and recovered from it, it reactivates in those people.
Yeah, we don't know.
That's a scenario
that will or won't happen.
That we as a country, we went from a majority of us ignoring the information because it wasn't being presented properly, to a lot of people being aware of it, but many of them saying things like, "Oh, it's a hoax," or "It's a conspiracy," or whatever. It's fake. It's a government power grab. In a very short period of time, we did that as a country in like a couple of weeks. From saying, "Oh, here we go with this Chinese virus." A lot of people. Me personally, I remember hearing people joking around, saying, "Oh, look at everyone panic buying, and look, this is no different from the flu. This is the bunch of people die from the flu every year. We don't have to shut the economy down." Well, this isn't the flu, and it's not only not the flu, but it's something that we've never had before. So another logical error I see a lot of people making in their predictions and the way they're adjusting their life and their thinking, who I'm going to vote for. I don't think we're going to have elections at some point. I think if everyone rushes back to their old system before we have this thing under control, we either have a cure or we have an extremely reliable treatment and a pretty proven vaccine. Because that's what we have for the flu, right? If you get the flu, you can get Tamiflu. And if you get a flu vaccine, then there might be years in a row where you just don't get the flu. But we're not going to be there this year. So for people to say, "Oh, do you think we'll be able to reopen the economy by the end of May?" I mean, the people who were saying that was just at the time already a super ridiculous thought. And at a moment's notice, just like with everybody slowly coming to the realization that it wasn't the flu or whatever they were joking around about, you could just as easily have another quick revelation where you go, holy shit, we're going to have to keep at this for, another year or two. We might have to be socially distant for several years in a row. We don't know. And it makes it, when I look at, what's his name, the governor of Florida, it's funny because he has a name, I don't remember his name, but he has a name that makes it sound like I would hate a person with that name, and that's before I even knew anything about him. Fuck. Somebody should Google it. I forget. He's on the news every day anyway. But when I think about him making the case for pro wrestling to keep going on, it all seems so silly and so futile and overshot.
Very, very fucking trivial.
How could that many millions of people have such poor judgment?
All right, I'm gonna be the smart one or the quickest one to the Google finger. The governor of Florida is douchebag Ron DeSantis.
Yeah, see, doesn't that just sound like a name that's attached to a punchable face?
Yeah, he's a pretty punchable looking face from what I'm seeing. Damn.
I'll have to do some homework on him. But yeah, I think it's a marathon, not a sprint. And I would hate to see too many more people die because we're all worried about our, the stock market and how much All these big companies are losing. These big companies, by the way, that hoarded all of this wealth. And on the scale of doing that, Vince McMahon is a very small player in the game. I mean, yeah, he might be a billionaire, but the WWE isn't some S&P 500 juggernaut like Johnson & Johnson or Raytheon.
And those companies
have
something to offer us right now.
They get what they have coming to them for hoarding all that wealth. All anybody seems to be worried about is how much money are they going to lose, or are they going to go out of business? Well, fuck them. They're the ones that decided to hoard all this money and make the whole focus of everything, how quickly can I get back to making money? Hey, if your whole operation burns down and takes you with it because you didn't want to take things seriously, I don't feel bad for them. Not at all. You and I can agree to stay socially distant just as two people who know better. If I'm one of these people who's not really essential, but all of a sudden my boss calls me because the governor, the county, whoever said that they could reopen business, and there's not an agreeing statement from the medical community to go with it, I would just be out of a job anyway, because nobody's making enough salary, especially like you said, with how many people live paycheck to paycheck. And there's no fucking money in gig work. If you're someone who relies on gigs to make your pay, if you're a wedding photographer or a DJ or a public speaker or a corporate team building activity person, you're screwed right now.
I hear the hookers are being hit especially hard during this, not surprisingly.
You know what? I thought about that, and I think whoever's going to fuck hookers is going to fuck hookers regardless of if there's a terrible plague. I mean, it didn't stop anybody from fucking hookers after we found out about HIV.
Well, you did show me that little piece of adult entertainment where they were wearing their corona masks, so maybe that's the new normal in the street biz. Come here, honey. Make sure you're wearing your mask fast. I can't blow you with mine on, so I'm just gonna bend over and let you put it in my butt a little bit, okay? Ugh, that was a good mental image. That hooker sounded hot. It was horrible. Do you want to? Shall we put this one to bed? You got anything else you'd like to add tonight?
No, I'm exhausted.
All right. Well, then let's call this an end to part 2 of the Shoe Dog and Mike Stay-at-Home Spectacular. Be safe, Mike. Be safe, everybody out there listening. We do appreciate it. We have a couple episodes that we put in the can before the virus, so the next time you hear from us, it will probably sound somewhat out of touch. But please forgive us, as the world wasn't falling apart at that point. All right, Mike. Adios, my friend.
Go sanitize your hands.